Good afternoon. So, anybody got a question?
Oh, and I'm sorry to interrupt. We're going to have to form a line because the mic is only one mic to go around the whole room, so we're going to line up in the middle if you have a question. For those who are disabled, don't worry. I'll wait alternate. I'll come to you. I will stop the line for that, so you have to move your wheelchairs or anything like that. But we will line up right here with questions. So if you are disabled, you have a question, raise your hand so I can know where you are, so I can make sure I go to you in a second.
I'm Lloyd. I'm a huge fan of yours. I just really wanted to know, like, you have done so many different roles and they're all so different, and I was just wondering, what is your favorite, if you have one?
Oh, God, it's a toughie because, of course, any role that I'm doing, at the moment I'm doing it, is my favorite in a sense. But certainly Back to the Future, and Reverend Jim, and what's his name, Uncle Fester, Captain Krug, and others, I'm sure. I'm sure. Just recently, doing Captain Krug, they had a what was his? They had a Klingon language for the Klingons, and there was an actual book published that had in it Klingon vocabulary, grammar, spelling, phonetics. It was like a textbook for any language, and they had created this book of Klingonese, and I thought that was amazing that a fantasy language became a reality in this book, and you could go out and learn it. Speak it among yourselves. I'm not suggesting anything, but I just feel I thought that was quite extraordinary. Thank you. I think I answered it now.
Hi. How did you feel about working on the animated film, The Page Master?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear that. What was your question?
How did you feel about working on The Page Master?
I had one full time on that because I was actually there as the page master, and then I was also an animation, all in the same film, which is kind of unique. I don't think I'd ever done that before or since, and it was wonderful working with Macaulay Culkin, right? And I thought it was a very imaginative idea, an interesting way to bring the classics, literature classics, to a young audience. So it's a good experience.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Christopher Lloyd, big fan. I just want to say that. I had a couple questions. Well, one question really, it's a three-parter. You've been in
Technically, that's three questions.
Well, it's one big question. You've been in three of my favorite movies as a kid. Angels in the Outfield. I'm blanking on here. I got it here. Page Master, of course, and then I can't believe. Dennis the Menace, of course. And I was wondering, in each of those, there's been a really big different star. So you've got Macaulay Culkin, Walter Matthau, and Danny Glover. I was wondering which of those was your favorite to work with, and if you had any funny anecdotes about working with them.
Oh, who was the last actor you mentioned?
Walter Matthau.
Oh, yes, Walter Matthau. Golly, and who was in the
Danny Glover.
Danny
Danny,
Glover.
that's a tough one. I guess I felt more in tune with Danny Glover because I was working with him more in that film than I was actually with Walter Matthau. And what was the last one?
Macaulay Culkin.
He was wonderful to work with. A lot of that came out of his being, still a very young person and already had created a career that was rather extraordinary. I always have had great admiration for Walter Matthau and Danny Glover, but an interesting Dennis, the actor who played Dennis the Menace, a young man, about 7 years old, and he was a huge mischief maker. I mean, while we were shooting in the studio, you never know where he would be or what kind of mayhem he was creating. He was all over the place. When he was in front of the camera, he was there, and he just continued being himself, and he was the perfect Dennis the Menace. It was in his nature. And when you work with young people, you often speculate, you kind of wonder what they become, years later. And his parents were always said he never did anything that was like harmful or really a problem, but he was a kid, and he could continue doing that in front of camera, and he was like quite a marvelous, crazy little guy. So years later, maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, I was having breakfast at a restaurant where I live, and I'm reading the paper, and this young man walks up to me in his early 20s, and I kind of look up, hello, and he said, I don't know if you remember me, Chris, but I was Dennis. I was blown away. And he was just, he's just an extraordinary young man, so to see that growth in someone, and his parents were there, and I went over and said hello to them. And he was in medical school at UCLA. He wasn't even acting anymore. So I kind of recall that as an amazing moment.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I know Doc Brown's going to come up eventually. He was my favorite character of yours. Reminded me, and many of my family members, of some of my crazier moments. But that aside, of all the characters you played, and you played lots, which one have you had the most fun with? That you had, in some sense, the most freedom to write yourself in?
Most fun. I guess I'm trying to think of something other than Doc Brown. I'm trying to search there for, we all had so much fun making that film because it was such a crazy piece, going back and forth in time, and it was a very complicated film to shoot. I remember that almost every single frame of that film, there's about 4 or 5 or 6 things happening at the same time. All the technical stuff going on, and often I remember in the scene in Back to the Future 3, Doc has created a machine that creates ice, and it's this huge mechanical structure that spouts steam and gears and everything moving around, and then a little spout here and plop, 1 cube of ice drops out, and then there's as that scene goes, there's a window. We hear a train whistle going, and you look out the window, and you see through the window the train coming into the station. I mean, this is a steam engine. It's a real train. It's not a toy. And to time that all out, the ice coming out at a certain moment, and the train being right where it should be in that same cut, and all that, and we did it over, and there were other factors too, technical things going on, and we do it over and over and over and over again. And of course I had my usual spiel. Doc is always, spieling about something.
And moments, a moment of eureka.
Huh?
it seemed like for that character, every moment was a moment of eureka, a moment of
Yeah, and going on, and they finally got all the technical stuff to happen when it was supposed to happen, and I flub my lines. Much to my chagrin, so we did it again. But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And my favorite of the three was Back to the Future 3, because working on that train, on that steam engine, with Claire screaming, and I'm having to rescue her, and it's a real train again. I mean, we're moving along, a real train. And then I chased the train, and on horseback, galloping after it, and I'd ridden a lot, but Doc Brown catches up with the train, reaches into the grip there, pulls himself on the train, and they said, "You're not doing that." And understandable, you could, if it didn't go right, somebody could, myself, could really be hurt. And I remember I galloped after that train, and I caught up to that train, and the grip was right there, and I just wanted so much to just take that and pull myself aboard, but I refrained, because if it didn't work out, it would be a disaster. And then Back to the Future 3 had a romance. When's the last time in any other film you've seen me have a romance? I had a romance. I actually had a beautiful little kiss on the carriage with a shooting star going by. I mean, that's as romantic as it gets, and all our clothes were on. There was that, and it was a Western. And then the dance scene, there's a dance scene that goes on. And I danced with Claire, there's other business. And they brought in ZZ Top, the band, to play. They played, and one of my favorite bands anyway, and a few local musicians, but the ZZ, those beards, the whole thing. And between takes, when they'd be setting something up, the ZZs would play. That was such a treat all night. So I'll go next.
Now, some of us actually remember way back, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Ah, yes.
You said something about blowing lines, and of course, no Hollywood writer's ever written a line that wasn't absolutely pure gold. But with that in mind, has there ever been a line where you actually reconsidered your career rather than be caught on film letting those words crawl out of your throat? You don't have to be specific, but it would be funnier if you were.
Let me understand quickly. You're saying...
Is there any dialogue that you just thought, no, I really don't ever want to say this?
No, not really. I mean, if it was that bad, it might have been something I may not have wanted to do in the first place. I've been lucky that most everything is written really well that I've done. I do remember in Back to the Future again, when we started shooting Back to the Future 2, I always would learn, try to know my lines a week before they would come up in a shoot. In other words, I'd memorize about 7 days ahead, so that always keeping ahead. And Doc Brown had a lot of pretty wordy, long, technological, language. And somewhere about the second week, while they were shooting 2, there was an accident, where some stuntmen were injured, and it meant completely changing the schedule, so that from one day to the next, you didn't know what was going to be scheduled. And I was totally panicked, because all I knew was about 7 days, and I thought, the only way I'm going to survive this is I've got to learn all of them, Back to the Future 2 tonight, so to speak. Yeah, I just try to memorize everything I could, as soon as I could, because I couldn't fall back on anything. But
Thank you.
thank you.
You've discussed several of great films, but we're leaving one out. One of my favorite films of all time has to be you playing Professor Plum in Clue. How much fun was it to work on that film with yourself and so many other funny people?
Yes.
All on one stage.
I think that may have been about the best ensemble, because each of those performances in that film was special, outstanding in their own right, and there was not a wrinkle among our association. We just loved doing that film. Everybody helped everybody else. It was nobody. There was no conflicts or any weirdness going on, or people feeling. It was like a team, a real team, and we rehearsed without camera for about 2 weeks before we began shooting, and then we shot it, and that was a wonderful experience. Strangely, it didn't do that well when it first came out here, but I've heard from many that it did very well in Britain, in England. And maybe it's sort of the nature of the game, that it's has a certain kind of sophistication that's maybe a little bit more appreciated over there. But I'm not those versions. But in the 2 days here signing autographs, so many people have come up and where's a picture of from Clue, and talk about Clue. It's more than a lot of other films, so it's endured.
Thank you.
There you go. Thank you.
How you doing, Christopher? Right here. In the wheels.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You enjoying the con? Are you enjoying the con?
Yes, I am. Having a lot of fun.
If you could take the DeLorean back to any big historical event.
To what?
If you could take the DeLorean back to any big historical event, whether any war or anything, or big moment in history, what would it be?
What comes to mind out of nowhere, the Battle of Hastings in 1066. I just sort of imagine what that must have been like. It was such a turning point. But I wouldn't mind being back in ancient Athens during the age of Pericles, the golden age. Where else? I wouldn't mind going back to a time before, during the period of the Neanderthals, before we became civilized, and see what that was like, Well, that's just some examples.
All right.
Thank you.
I was just wondering, you've played a lot of really amazing roles through the years, but is there a role that you've kind of always really wanted to play, or a character that, say from a great literature or whatever, that you just really love to play once, either on screen or on stage?
Well, actually, there's a theater in Vermont that I've been working in time to time since 1962 or 63. It's a wonderful, wonderful theater in a beautiful area of Vermont, which has barely changed since I first went there. And the theater brings up the best of creative talent, actors and actresses, directors, costumers, lighting people, etc. And they just recently, Irene, the flooding from Irene in Vermont, the bottom of the theater was kind of washed out entirely, and they lost. It's severely damaged, but it's still there. Anyway, I go back from time to time, and they often ask me to come back for a season, and I say I can't because I'm working, or I need to, I need to make a living. You don't make it but last year I went back as part of a fundraising thing for the theater. They said, "Is there, anything you want to do next summer?" Meaning last summer, and I felt I've got to make a commitment. I've got to be there to do the play, so I did. And I thought about it overnight. I said, I'd love to come back and do Death of a Salesman. This incredible play by Arthur Miller. And the role of Willie Loman. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the play. But it is such an incredible play. And even though it was written in 1949, and I worried a lot about whether, how it would work with today's audience. But it touches on so many things that are happening today with the economy, with unemployment, with stresses on the family, raising young children, a couple of sons. That there's never a moment when the audience does not relate to something that's happening in a play in a personal way, or was very close to. And it was just terrific. Willie Loman is a huge, extraordinary role, and we played it for about a month at that theater, and then toured around New England and Boston, etc. And I've been thinking over the year, I would love to do it again. I mean, it's just, you could do it and do it, and still feel that there was more you could do with it, So I've told my manager that. I said, if there's a production being planned somewhere at a college, a community theater, a repertory company somewhere, I'm game, because it's just such a great, it's a thrill to do something that is so well written and so relevant to our time, to all of us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Hey.
I was actually wondering, with the recent Back to the Future game series, how much of a difference was it from playing Doc Brown to just doing the voice acting and just, speaking like him?
I just did what I did in the film. I tried to do that. Sometimes the writing was a little different. It wasn't Bob Gale's writing all the time, and I found it didn't seem like it was true to the character. So I would have to work a little harder to try to compensate for that, because I didn't want Doc Brown to be kind of lose his voice, so to speak. His spirit and who he become in the films. But other than that, it was doing the role again. And the nice thing about doing an animation is that you don't have to memorize the lines. You got all the lecture in front of you, so that was cool.
Thanks.
Hi.
Hi.
I was curious, recently you were doing a lot of guest starring roles on television shows, and I was wondering, like Chuck and Fringe, are you seeked out for these things, or are you seeking out roles of this sort? And what was it like working on Chuck?
Sorry, something's going on over there. Must be a lot of fun.
It is. It's over across the hall. They know how awesome you are, so they're clapping over there too.
I don't know what to say about that.
I was asking, recently you've done a lot of guest starring roles on television shows like Chuck and Fringe, and are you seeked out for these things, or are you going up and saying, hey, I'd like to be a part of your show? And what was it like to work on Chuck?
Chuck, I was the psychiatrist at the Central Intelligence Agency, and I really dug it because as much as I love doing Doc Brown or Reverend Jim or some of the other characters I've done, I love doing somebody who's in reality, it's just a person. And this guy was, he was kind of a brainy guy, and if he's a head psychiatrist at the CIA, he's got to be brainy. So that was a challenge, and but I love that challenge to try to create a character that's so different from and so more normal than all the other characters that I do. So I love that, and I've done some other guest spots where I get a chance to do something I might not be asked to do in a big film, say, and I yearn for roles like that. And whenever the opportunity comes up, I grab it.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hi. What was it like working with the late Andy Kaufman, and can you answer the question in character as Reverend Jim?
It was all okay. I've lost it a little bit. If I may speak for the Rev, it was good working with Andy. He was, a lot of people think, was he nuts? Was he crazy? Was he this and that? He was none of the above. The guy had a very special sense of humor and a sense of irony about things. And he was really very disciplined and creative about how to get that across to audiences. He had, like Vic, that other character that he did, and Latka, and other things that he did. He planned it out very carefully. He knew what he wanted to share with the audience, and he worked really hard at it. But he had some eccentricities about him, but he was really pretty down to earth, lovely person who lived in kind of an alternate universe. I'm sorry, I'm trying to do this well. But interesting about him, I can't do it anymore. It's but when we were running Taxi, we'd come back from a vacation sometimes, a Christmas break or whatever. And I couldn't get myself into the groove. I couldn't seem to find, just like right now, I couldn't seem to find Iggy, get him, and after a while, without my being aware of it at first, I would start thinking of my oldest brother, who's deceased, but he was 22 years older than I, and he had a kind of set thing in his face, kind of like that. And I realized that was my source, And my brother, he never smoked, never went to did drugs, never went to Peru, didn't drink, but that became my template, I would start thinking about my brother and Reverend Jim would come back.
Thank you.
Hi there. I met you yesterday, and I've only seen you on screen before. And I was struck by how good shape you're in. You look like you work out, do you?
Yeah, I was in the gym last night.
Yeah.
No, I do work out pretty consistently, and if I don't feel good. 2 or 3 days go by, and I feel like a sack of,
Can we get a muscle?
Huh?
Can we get a muscle?
Mr. Lloyd.
Yes.
I became a fan of yours when you were in Taxi, and my question is, at what point in the show did you realize not only did you have a great ensemble cast, but this was going to become a sitcom classic?
I don't know. I get during the run of the show, but I don't remember there was one particular instance. It's like some people ask me, well, "Did you ever have any idea that Back to the Future, was going to have live so long?" And I think we just wanted to hope that the film would open and be successful. Let alone here we are 25 years later, and it's still going on. I don't know. There was a kind of a rawness and honesty about what the writers wrote for Taxi. Kind of a grittiness and a certain kind of reality that was kind of a New York urban, but it was a humor. The humor extended everywhere, and there was just a feeling, this is cool. We're doing a good thing here, and I think we all felt that before the run ended. Except there was a guy I met who was from Oklahoma or Kansas or somewhere out there, and he was like, I never watched Taxi. I mean, what do you want? Work all day and you come back and you see that little fart Louis. Sorry, little nasty little guy. That was his honest feeling. Louis. What do I need him in my life for? And so, different strokes. So, was there a second part?
No, that's it. Thanks very much.
Hello, Mr. Lloyd.
Yeah.
So in most of your roles, you played the good guy, right? I mean, you played pretty benevolent characters, but in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, we found out that you framed Roger Rabbit. You played Judge Doom, right?
Uh-huh.
So how did you feel about that role? Playing that guy?
I loved it. I loved doing it. There's two characters that I've had that were just genetically bad, that had no heart, no sympathy, no compassion, no decency. They just the means justify the ends, heartless, and that would be Captain Crew and Judge Doom, and I love that. You don't have to think about, am I going to hurt his feelings or hurt her feelings, or how are they going to feel if I do this or I do that. You just do what the hell you want to do, and let the pieces fall where they may. Collateral damage, so what? And it's just delicious to get your teeth into something like that, because I think we all understand what I'm talking about. It's just kind of fun. So I love doing Doom, and I love the convention of the cartoon character, and the way that the way they created him.
You're a great cartoon.
Oh yeah, amazing. That was not done digitally in that film. Bob Zemeckis, when he created the film, wanted to do it the old-fashioned way, where every cell, as they call it, every little frame is painted individually, and you have an artist who paints the background, you have another artist who paints the rabbit, another artist who paints the trees, and so forth. And so you have there are several parts to each just a single frame, right? Today, you can tap it out and whatever they do, and you get a similar effect. So we shot in London most of the time, and there was like an old brick building that was built from some kind of manufacturing, 3 or 4 stories high, and I would go visit there occasionally, and each floor was divided into these cubicles, and each cubicle had artists in it, live artists in it, paying some little fraction of the film. And they lived in there for about 3 months. These were artists from all over the world: Japan, India, Asia, South America, Europe, United States. And the heaps of finished Chinese dinner cartons, cups, all that. It was kind of surreal. But that's how that film was made. Bit by bit, it was an amazing thing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to bring up what I consider one of the great moments in television comedy and ask, did you ever find out what a yellow light means?
I'm glad you bring that out because that was an interesting moment. That was my first, I did a guest spot on Taxi where I married a locked into, I think, a prostitute so that he could get his green card and stay in the United States. I just came in and it was a cameo role and I come in, and then about 3 months later I started as a regular. And that episode where they take Reverend Jim to the automobile,
DMV.
The DMV to get his license so he can drive a cab. And on the day that we'd rehearse all week, and then we'd shoot Friday night with a live audience. And by 6 o'clock Friday afternoon, we would normally be released and go get some dinner and rush back and get ready to do the show. And the audience would come in. And on that particular episode, and we rehearsed all afternoon with all the cameras and costumes. It was a full dress rehearsal, all the actors. And once in a while, there would come a moment where the writers just couldn't come up with a solution to something. And eventually it would get to a point where anybody, if you're a light man up there or a janitor who happens to be passing through, whoever can come up with and save this moment, and that's what that moment came out of. What does a yellow light mean? They couldn't figure out what to do. It's after 6 o'clock, they'd say, well, try this. So we do the scene, and I do whatever they told me to try. And then somebody else would say, how about if, so we try that. How about, and somebody, I don't remember who it was, came up with that. I said, well, how about if he says, slow down, and then he said, somebody saved the show, saved that moment, and came up with that, and that's how that moment was created. It wasn't like the writers thought, hey, this is, while they were working upstairs by themselves, thought, hey, this is a good idea. It was desperation. It was desperation at the last minute, but it was great show. Thank you.
Mr. Lloyd, I'm a little young for Taxi, but I grew up on your movies. One of my favorites of all time is Camp Nowhere. And when I watch that movie, I can't help but think, man, does Christopher Lloyd really like this? So my question is, what role that you played was the closest to the real Mr. Lloyd?
To the real Mr. Lloyd? I'm still looking for him. I don't know. I feel Cuckoo's Nest. Cuckoo's Nest is pretty raw all the way around. There wasn't any kind of, I feel at the time that Cuckoo's Nest was what I felt about that character, and I was pretty much one and the same. I don't know. I'm trying to think if there's some in some way I try to bring something of myself to whatever I do. I think there's a lot of Doc Brown in me, even though I don't go around behaving like him or Reverend Jim and others. I try to inhabit my roles with something that I relate to, so it has to come from me. But I think Cuckoo's Nest, Tabor, was pretty honest in that. It didn't have an overlay of makeup and costume and something. It was just straight on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, I was just wondering, you work with so many awesome dudes. So who left that you haven't worked with, would you kind of want to? And also, you mentioned your last love interest on film, so who would you want to be your next love interest on film?
I don't know, but I'm ready.
First, I wanted to thank you for coming down to DragonCon and talking to all of us.
I'm sorry?
Oh, thank you for coming down to DragonCon. And my question was, when I was younger, growing up in the 80s, I remember you playing a lot of different villains, whether that was in the Lone Ranger film, or in Star Trek, or Roger Rabbit. Which villain did you like playing the best?
I forgot about the Lone Ranger.
I haven't heard it mentioned, so I thought I'd throw it in there.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That was a villain that I really enjoyed playing. And it was an early film, and I was still getting I started out in the theater, but that's all I did for many, many years, and then Cuckoo's Nest came along, my first film, and that Lone Ranger film was not long after that, so I was still kind of feeling what it was like to work in a film. But, yeah. So you asked me which one of the villains I like the best?
Yes.
I seem to be thinking Captain Krug.
Kind of like on his question. I know that you did a lot of makeup and special effects in your movies, such as, like the guy in Bakura Banzai and Captain Krug in Star Trek. Which one did you like best with the makeup, and which one did you not like with the makeup? It was like basically took forever to do.
I think about the one I liked the least was, makeup-wise, would probably be Bakura Banzai, because it was a makeup that covered your entire face into your mouth, around the lips and all around the eyes, and we were doing it in the summer. A lot of it was played in a closed-up Firestone Tire Company factory in East Los Angeles, and it was damp and musty and hot, in the 90s, and it's humid, and it was all that on was so uncomfortable. And I remember there was an actor who was in Cuckoo's Nest, and you may remember. And he also was a guest sometimes on Taxi. Vincent Schiavelli. He passed away a while back, but and he had very sensitive eyes. And I remember one day he was sitting in the chair. We were out in the lawn at this place on location. He wore the same makeup as I did. We were both a couple of villains in the piece, and he just went into a tirade. I mean, the producer wrote saying, you know, that this makeup, damn you all, kind of feeling. And yeah, that was the worst. But the one that I enjoyed wearing the most, again, was Captain Crew. I mean, I had all that Klingon stuff, and the hair, and I think I had a couple of scars, and that makeup, and the weighty, big costume. Man, it felt so good. I enjoyed that.
Good afternoon. I read a bit ago that George Clooney said that doing the Batman movie saved his career because he realized this is a really bad movie and I don't ever want to do something that bad again. Have you had a moment like that in your career where you realized I need to do something different or else I'm not going to be able to do what I love for the rest of my life?
Well, I'm always excited about doing something different. I mean, I get a lot of scripts, and I can see in the script that the guy they want is sort of like Reverend Jim. You know, he's somebody, a homeless person or something. You know, so this, and then I get scripts, and I can see they're looking for a dark brown type of guy and all that. So I love getting something that does not, that you don't think about, oh, that's the guy that did this. This is something new, and I can do that. And I was going to say something about this, and I kind of lost it. What was Clooney talking about a film that he did that he just wanted to die from. I did a film like that, and if you look up some of those books that have, it's sort of compendium, has all the films ever made, and it has stars, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars after it. There's a paragraph that describes the film and all that. I've got one of those that has a little turkey, and it was called A Man and a Dog. It's about twin brothers, and their father dies, but one of the brothers has been lost, and it's found out that he's been left out in the wilderness, and he was raised by wolves. And there's another brother who dad's, you know, close to his dad, and stands to inherit this vast fortune if the wild brother is not found. And he is found, and he's on all fours all the time, but he does begin to become civilized, and of course in the end he gets the money. And I have a scene at the end where I'm down on my hands and knees in a court of law, barking. There's other moments in the film. That's a film I don't want to see again. It is an embarrassment.
Thank you.
And I'm sure all of you will go and hustle outside. That's okay.
Good afternoon. We talking about all you great actors you work with, great movies you've been in. One movie that didn't really have a great actor in it. That was your co-star, Hulk Hogan, from Suburban.
Oh, Suburban Commando.
How was you feel about that movie now, after 20 years later, and also working with a rascal? You know, how was he just like another actor, or would you have to kind of train him what to do and not to do?
He was just himself, pretty much. He was very, very modest about his acting abilities. He did not see himself as the next, whatever. He was very, his real first name is, as I remember, is Terry, and it doesn't fit with Hulk. and he was a Hulk. I mean, he was about 280 pounds, and built the way he is. He was an extraordinary man, and I sometimes hear through a friend, we say hello to each other, but I haven't seen him for a very long time. And he's just a very sweet man to work with, and very imposing. And I love working with him. I didn't try to coach him at all. He just was himself, and that was it. I remember going to, he took me to a wrestling, in LA, to a wrestling, one of those professional wrestling matches, and he was in it. I remember going in the locker room and seeing all these guys, with his size and builds, and another world. But I remember he lost the match. Of course, it's scripted. And he lost the match, and he acted for about 15 minutes about, trying to get the audience's sympathy, and, crying, and feeling it was unfair, and he should have won. He just was going around all by himself in that ring, being a jerk, but being what it was expected of him in his role as it was scripted. It was kind of, wonderful to watch. But he was great to work with, a really decent person.
Okay, I'm from Orlando, Florida, home of Universal Studios, and within the past couple of years, the Back to the Future ride was replaced by the Simpsons ride. I was wondering how something like that feels to see happen, because I know whenever I went to the park and realized it was heartbreaking to see something from my childhood removed. How does it feel like, as an actor from that movie, to see that happen?
Well, the ride had such a long, the Back to the Future ride before they changed it. It was there for years. I mean, many, many, many years. So I think the time had come for a change. That's sort of the way the world works. It's Oh, I thought I remember, because I used to ride that ride a lot. One time I was with an ex-wife, and we were riding at one time. We were there, and I think we went 2 or 3 times, and I kind of was like, in a fun kind of way, making out with her while we were on the ride. And she was like, get away from me and all that. And then afterwards, they took us on a tour around offstage area, and discovered that there are guys sitting down in front of monitors, and that every single seat is monitored. And that they had seen, what was going on. And they do that for safety purposes, in case somebody has a heart attack or something happens or whatever. But,
First of all, I want the audience to know of your dedication to the role of Captain Crew. Years ago, I had lunch with Mark Oberon, who's the creator of the Klingon language, and he was off camera, and he told me that before every tape, you would check with him and say, do I have it right? And I think there are very few actors who would go to that level of detail, so kudos to you for that level of dedication. But my question is actually about Doc Brown. It seemed like you had developed an iconic look, a wild-eyed look. The first scene when you opened the door on Marty, but even the great scene where you looked like Superman on the clock tower and had that moment of realization that you were the only one that could save the future. And you had that look of determination that you had to slide down and connect the wires together. So my question is, did you develop that all on your own, or did Bob Zemeckis say, I want you to have this look in certain scenes?
I don't know that Bob Zemeckis ever said that that's the look he wanted, because I felt it was inherent in the script. I mean, the guy has got to accomplish, he's got to get that plug there before the lightning strikes, and it's imperative. He's got to do that, like you say, to save the universe. I do remember a couple of things. Before we shot that, around shooting that scene, I walked up to up the stairs. You know, I mean, that wasn't a real building; it was a facade that just structural work behind it. I went up the stairs to the ledge where I did the scene, and just to see what it was like. And the ledge was about that wide. If you came out of the window, the ledge was about that wide. The clock was right up there, and I thought, there's just no way I'm going to be standing on this ledge. And I knew that they had, I would have a cable, you know, one of those cables that you can hang a truck on, attached to me, and I'd be in a harness, and that if I did fall off the ledge, I wasn't going to fall all the way down, you know. But it's just a thought. I mean, you know, and so I went to Bob, and I said, one day, and I said, I've been thinking, maybe I can do this on my knees. I'll come out on my knees. And he just did not buy that at all. I think I heard him say, no fucking ways. So I did as I was told. But being up there, a lot of my emotionality came from just the fact of where I was, you know. And there was one night when I'm up on the clock and I'm holding on to the clock and the hands are there, looking down, all that. Part of that they did in the studio. They built a replica of the clock, and you know, so I could just step up there and do it. But I remember one of those cranes with a little bucket, and I went up on the crane, up to the clock. They attached me to the cable. I grabbed hold of the clock, and then the crane went away. I was all up there, all by myself, and it gave me a lot of motivation. That was that story.
Is there anything from any of your roles that you kept, like a keepsake, like did you rip the flux capacitor out of the DeLorean, you know, and keep it unexpandable, or, you know, and if so, what, you know, is your favorite piece you've kept?
Well, actually, the only piece I have is a shirt I wore, costume, part of the costume in Back to the Future 3, and I rarely wear it, but I treasure it. And when I do wear it, it's something special. But I don't have any other keepsakes from the show. Sorry.
Thank you.
Is there any role that maybe you, or script that you had that you passed on that you regret?
Any role?
Any role that you've passed on that you regret now after seeing the movie?
Oh, yeah, there is. Some years ago, back in the early 80s, I guess, the director, he's a New York director, he's famous. No, but he did Mean Streets, the film, directed that. Martin Scorsese, and back in the early 80s, he was directing a film called, I think, The Passion of St. Matthew. I think that was the film. And it was going to be shot in Spain, and it had, back then, a great cast, and I was going to be one of the disciples. It wasn't a huge part, but it was a part in a Martin Scorsese film. And I had some kind of attitude where for whatever reason, I turned it down. I mean, where is my head? Where is my head? Martin Scorsese, if he's doing like, whatever, you do it, because he's a great director, and I might have worked with him many more times, because he often uses the same actors, so that was a slip. I made the wrong decision there, and I regret it, because I would love to work with him. But,
I think that's all the time we have, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you guys.
Thank you.